Good evening and welcome. I'm Errol Lewis, political anchor here at NY1. After months of a devastating public health crisis, the city is now in the middle of days of mass protests seeking police reform, as well as several nights of unrest that involved looting. As we cover these events on NY1, we're also keeping our eyes on the upcoming primary that falls on June 23rd for many seats, including for Congress, for state Senate and Assembly, and for Queensborough President. The people elected to these offices will be grappling with serious issues that are being discussed both here and all around the country. Tonight, we're holding a Democratic primary debate for New York's 14th congressional district, which covers parts of Queens and the Bronx. As you can see on this map, the 14th district stretches across several neighborhoods, including Astoria, Woodside, Jackson Heights, Parkchester, and Throgs Neck. The seat is currently held by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who won election in 2018. She joins us tonight. We've also invited some of the leading candidates who are challenging her to this debate. Tonight, we're joined by former journalist Michelle Caruso-Cabrera and community leader and activist Badrun Khan. The rules that you see on the screen have all been agreed to by the candidates. You can see this full debate on NY1.com at any time. And I want to note that we are taping this on Thursday, June 4th. Now on to the opening statements. The order for tonight's opening statements was determined by a random drawing. Michelle Caruso-Cabrera will go first. Good evening.
Good evening. Errol, thank you so much for hosting this. It's greatly appreciated. These are troubling times for the country and the city, Errol, and we need to come together as we grapple with the murder of George Floyd and the impact that it's had. We need unity, and the choice that the voters face couldn't be more clear. I am about unity, and my opponent is about divisiveness and polarization. She was the only Democrat to vote against $75 billion for hospitals, $25 billion for coronavirus testing in the middle of a pandemic when we needed it. I would never do that. She worked against Nancy Pelosi. She voted against hundreds of billions of dollars for paychecks. When I am out delivering food, masks, hand sanitizer, talking to my neighbors who are out of work and desperate to go back to work as soon as it is safe, they can't believe that. You know what they tell me? They tell me AOC is MIA. Her polarization and divisiveness, it's not good for the Times, it's not good for New York, and it's not good for our neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Badrun Khan.
Thank you, Errol, for having me and inviting me to this debate. I decided to run about a year ago because we still have lack of issues of job, housing, immigration issues, and healthcare. And District 14 right now is the epicenter of the coronavirus COVID-19. That's why I support the universal basic income, which will allow $1,000 for people who could actually get their kids who don't have food now, because of food insecurity that's happening in my district is really sad. The lines are insane. Which also comes to my next fact that we don't have enough hospitals in my neighborhood. That's really important that we need to find more hospitals because everybody was driving to Elmhurst. The second reason is I also want to talk about equality in income we just don't have. And talking about equality is what's happening right now. What happened to George Floyd, my heart goes out to his family and everybody who's having in this situation. We stand for Black lives. After I saw the video, I said, I can't breathe. We need to all come together and put the country first and unite everyone together. But right now, currently, we have a lot of issues going with COVID-19. People are losing people. We need peace, and we need to stand together to protect our loved ones and the people in our district.
Thank you. Next is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you, Errol, and thank you to all of our New Yorkers that are tuning in right now. Clearly today and in this moment, we are in a desperate crisis, but we are in a pandemic inside a pandemic inside a pandemic, the pandemic of racism, inside the pandemic of extreme economic inequality and desperation prompted by the pandemic, the health pandemic of COVID-19. And one of the things that we're learning from all of these pandemics, whether it's the brutal murder of George Floyd or whether it's the inability for our undocumented and our immigrant brothers and sisters in our community to be afraid to go to a hospital, is that they are pointing to existing inequalities in our system that have been set ablaze. These problems are not new. They require they require new systemic solutions. And it requires the Democratic Party to step up and advance notions like healthcare as a human right with Medicare for all, ending qualified immunity to stop police brutality, and making sure that we are continuing to guarantee jobs and dignified pay and working conditions for every New Yorker without leaving anyone behind, including with respect to your immigration status. I have always fought for these issues. I am not new to these issues. I ran on them in 2018, and every promise that I made, I have delivered upon, and I am proud to have championed our community when the rest of the country wanted to leave us behind. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So candidates, thousands are in the streets marching for police reform every night. And at this moment, as a matter of fact, what public actions have you taken since the disturbances began? And if elected, what actions would you take in the district and in the halls of Congress to address the protesters' concerns? We're going to start with you, Ms. Caruso Cabrera.
If I were in Congress right now, I would be working closely with Nancy Pelosi to bring legislation forward that addresses key issues like criminal justice reform, but that's not enough. We have seen terrible racial inequities play out within the healthcare system as we have seen African Americans and Latinos ravaged by COVID-19. And that's due to decades of injustices when it comes to unequal spending, when it comes to unequal spending with healthcare and education. I would be in Congress showing national leadership, working with Nancy Pelosi to bring a bill forward that addresses those issues. Unlike my opponent, who works against her and works against everyone in the party, we cannot move forward, and we can't move a bill forward unless we all work together. That's what we need right now, unity. And that's what I would be about, making sure that we address all of the issues that have come to the forefront that we've known about, but have never been justified and never been rectified. Now we can do that if we work together.
Say a little more, please, about what you've been doing in the district. You mentioned some of that in your introduction. So from day one, I've started delivering food to frontline workers. I've been delivering masks, hand sanitizer, 100 gallons of hand sanitizer, nearly 20,000 masks. We've delivered them to organizations that support the elderly, because I knew they were going to be some of the most affected. Also to churches here in Queens and in the Bronx to make sure that they are distributed to the neediest. And throughout that process, as I've been out there every day, you know what community leaders tell me? They tell me AOC is MIA. And the worst part is, Errol, at the height of the crisis, when we saw lines in front of Elmhurst Hospital, my opponent, who promised to be present when she ran, she didn't come home. She stayed in her luxury apartment in Washington, D.C. for a full week, even though Congress was not in session. Okay,
how could she do that?
Let's give her a chance to respond. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you so much, Errol. I'll start first and foremost by actually answering the question that you asked, which is what policy commitments would we make? One is that we need to end qualified immunity, which shields police officers and shields abusive members of all law enforcement, not just police, but also CBP, et cetera, from covering up inhumane abuses, and it covers up constitutional abuses. No person who breaks the law, no person who hurts another human being intentionally should be shielded. The other thing that we need to commit to is ending the transfer of military equipment to local police departments. They are not equipped for it. They are not trained for it, and police are not military. The third thing that I think we should do on a local level, but one that I'm actively engaged in advocacy for, is the reduction of really truly talking about the reduction of our NYPD budget and defunding a $6 billion NYPD budget that costs us books in the hands of our children and costs us very badly needed investment in NYCHA and public housing. But with respect to this allegation of absence, I'm very happy to say that I am constantly home in this district. Throughout this campaign, Ms. Caruso-Cabrera has been very fixated on 6 days in which I wasn't feeling well and still showed up and still did town halls and still did virtual fundraisers for our community. I can't really speak much as to why she is so fixated on it, but I can tell you that in my first term, I have personally hosted and attended over 200 events in district, 17 town halls, which puts me as one of the most active members of the New York State delegation. I have organized 235,000 constituent check-in calls for our neighbors here in New York's 14th Congressional District, delivered over 3,000 grocery bags, which includes about a week's worth of meals to people's homes so that they don't have to go out to food pantries. And in addition to tens of thousands of masks to our local hospitals, Jacobi Medical Center, in addition to working with the Yemeni Bodega, the Yemeni American Merchants Association, to make sure that our frontline bodega workers are also safe from coronavirus as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, it's the least you could do after driving away $27 billion in taxes when you pushed out Amazon.
We're going to get to those other issues. Stand by. I want to give Ms. Khan a chance to respond. What have you been doing since the advent of the pandemic, and what would you do if elected to help your district?
Well, first of all, we have a law here that's in the state that two state has it, is the Police Secrecy Act of 50-8 law. That needs to be repealed because that you can't get information for misconduct, what happens with our police officers. The other thing that I have noticed when you see a police officer get out of the academy, they only have 6 months of training, which we need to increase these trainings for them because the reason is they don't have the ability to understand how to cope with certain violence crime, or how to cope mentally with people. That needs to be addressed. And if I'm in Congress, I also want to do an act that will be called the George Floyd Act, showing people the justice that we need to make sure anybody who commits a crime should be punished for the crimes they committed. And we should be strong. Being a Muslim, I have that same thing. We could understand how people have racism towards us. I could understand that. And being in the community, what I have done being in the community, I have gone out, distribute foods, gave masks out, I contacted all my community leader, all the mosques, all the churches. I'm doing as a community leader that I have been doing for a long, long time. But I do want to add something to Ms. Cabrera-Caruso. Said she wants to believe in healthcare. But according to your book you wrote, you wanted to eliminate Medicare. So
That's not true. That's not true, Errol.
According to your book. And I also want to say that your book that you wrote, Larry Kudlow, is actually Trump economic advisor. So I just want to get that issue out there because I know in your book you said I am right. So what is the healthcare issue that you said that you want to do healthcare? So how is that?
Let me do this. We'll hold that. I know Ms. Caruso-Cabrera is going to want to respond to that. I imagine Larry Kudlow is quoted in the book or blurbed it or something like that.
He wrote the foreword to the book. Yeah.
Let me ask all of you a question because it has come up in other debates and was alluded to by Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. And I want to ask you about some specific legislation and get everybody on the record about it. H.R. 4408 is called the Eric Garner Excessive Use of Force Prevention Act, which would implement a national ban on chokeholds or maneuvers that restrict oxygen or blood flow, and also create a national standard on the use of force. Would you support that? And I also wanted to hear more from each of you about the 1033 program, under which the Defense Department makes military equipment available to local police departments. In any order.
Well, Errol, I can say I'm proud to be supportive of both of these bills. We need to ban chokeholds. We need to ban it at every level of government, from city council all the way up to the federal government. And as I just stated, I absolutely believe that we need to ban the use of and the transfer of military equipment to local police departments. It is absolutely patently unacceptable for that for that connection to be made, and it further reinforces the frame that and the division and the idea that that the public is the general enemy of the state. And when you use weapons that are designed for enemies and bring them here back home, we also import those paradigms and those frameworks, and it's incredibly dangerous. So we have to make sure that that practice ends.
Okay, Ms. Caruso Cabrera, the anti-chokehold bill and the military transfer program out of the Pentagon. What do you think?
Yeah, I would support the chokehold ban for sure. It's put forth by Representative Hakeem Jeffries. That's someone that AOC threatened to mount a primary or support
That's
somebody
completely and patently
against.
False.
And military equipment should not be delivered to police officers and to police departments. I would say that that's not enough. George Floyd wasn't murdered by military equipment. He was murdered by a police officer holding his knee to his neck. So we need much more. We need much better training. We need to take a hard look at what happens in police departments, that something like that could happen, that he could hold his knee there for another 2 minutes and 43 seconds after George Floyd laid still. That's what we have to get to the root of.
Okay, Ms. Khan. Now, you know what? Let me give Ms. Ocasio-Cortez a chance to respond, since you did mention her.
Well, I mean, what she just said was just a patent falsehood, so I'll just save my limited breath and break.
Primary Hakeem Jeffries. Okay, Ms. Khan.
So I agree with both, because I think the chokehold should be eliminated, because that's something that should not be used excess force. I agree with Ms. Ocasio-Cortez that this is something should not. And as for military, no, they should not be coming into our police station. We need more and more training with our police officers. What's happening right now is just about not George Floyd. Look at how many people are affected by this. So we need to make sure we have enough training for these people to come out and see what they protect. They're there to protect us. How are they protecting us is the question. They need to be more trained, and instead of sending more military equipment, which I do not agree with, that's for something else, not for our police department.
All right, thank you, candidates. We are going to take a short break now. We'll be right back with more from our debate for New York's 14th Congressional District. Welcome back to our Democratic primary debate for the 14th Congressional District, which covers parts of Queens and the Bronx. We're going to talk more about the global COVID-19 pandemic now. And candidates, as was mentioned by Ms. Khan, the 14th District is the center of the epicenter of the COVID-19 crisis. In recent weeks, among the zip codes with the highest number of positive cases, many of the top 10 fall within New York 14, especially in the neighborhoods of Jackson Heights, Corona, Elmhurst, and East Elmhurst. I wanted to hear a little bit more about what you think going forward should be done to make the district more resilient and more resistant to the problems of COVID-19. Let's start with you, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes, well, you know, one of the things that COVID-19 has done was really just expose the holes in our overall system, not just our healthcare system, where far too many people cannot go to afford to see a doctor, but also people who are afraid to see our doctors. In New York 14, about half of our district is that we know of is immigrant. Everyone fill out your census so that we make sure that that we get that data. But because of that, because of the targeting of undocumented people in our community, we also need to make sure that we are taking strong measures to repeal the public charge so that people are not afraid to go to the doctor and feel like they will be put on line for deportation for doing so. Additionally, one of the things that I have been championing very much, working with Senator Chuck Schumer and with the support of Nancy Pelosi, has been trying to secure burial funds for our community. COVID-19 is not affecting all communities differently. The mortality rate among Black Americans during the COVID-19 epidemic is astronomically high. And what that means in the context of our community and communities like East Elmhurst, Corona, even out in Allerton on the Bronx half of the district, Parkchester, is that communities that are losing, working class families that are tragically losing a mother and a son or multiple people in their families have to now deal with tens of thousands of dollars in burial expenses. And when you concentrate that cost among Black Americans, Latino Americans, what that means is that it will exacerbate the racial wealth gap in this country, because all our communities are not bearing the brunt easily. So we have to make sure that we are guaranteeing healthcare as a human right, that we are repealing the public charge, that we're allowing all people to get tested and covered, not just for COVID-19, but also related diseases like pneumonia. And also, I'm a believer that healthcare is a human right. I don't think that anybody should not go to the doctor because they can't afford it, which is what our current healthcare system does.
Okay. Ms. Khan.
So I think Elmhurst was the hardest hit because there's reasoning about housing also that's an issue. When people left the hospital, they have in one apartment 5 to 4 people living there, kids living there. They couldn't be isolated. The hospital was overflowed with people that they actually had to come home. That's a very big issue in Corona, Elmhurst. We need to fix that issue. We need more affordable housing. So when people did leave the hospital, they have a space to stay. But with COVID-19, what also happened is the death rate was so high. In my community, we actually did a lot of burial service. So we sent people to New Jersey. The fund we raised individually with people, we gathered with the association. It actually hit the South Asian, the Blacks, the Latinos, people of color, everyone got hard. And the reason is we didn't have enough income level there. And what we needed to do is get more jobs in the community, work together and see how can we protect that particular community. And the sad part is the small businesses had to shut down because no one knew who had the disease because we don't have enough testing. And in the future, we need to be more test appropriated. And also that I said, we need more hospitals in our district.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Caruso Cabrera.
Errol, I saw with my own eyes the long lines outside of Elmhurst Hospital at the height of the crisis. People from all over the world who've come to Queens to try to make it, and they were desperate to get in. So I find it quite odd that my opponent, AOC, says she cares so much about them when she voted against $75 billion for hospitals like Elmhurst that were helping immigrants. She voted against $25 billion for coronavirus testing. When I am out delivering masks, when I am out delivering food and hand sanitizer, when I talk to the people who are desperate in line, my neighbors who are desperate to go back to work, they are very much concerned about how they are going to get testing. When are they going to get back to work? And she voted against all of their interests. I would have voted for that bill. And I would be working with Nancy Pelosi right now for another stimulus bill. By the way, she voted for the last one. She didn't even want it to come to the floor, AOC, because she's always MIA. I would be working with Nancy Pelosi right now on a stimulus bill that addresses the long-term inequities that have happened in healthcare spending. We need more spending on public health. We also need, I liked your suggestion that you wrote about, Errol, a massive education program sponsored by our local hospitals to make sure that our communities live healthy lives so they don't have the underlying issues that made them so much more susceptible to dying. It was horrific to watch.
That is a brilliant
but to do all that, to do all that, we need unity. We got to work with people. We can't have divisiveness and polarization.
I want to give Ms. Ocasio-Cortez a chance to respond.
Thank you so much. I do think it's important. Let's talk about that because there are multiple coronavirus relief packages. I voted for the HEROES Act and I voted against the CARES Act. And what Ms. Caruso Cabrera is declining to tell the public is that the CARES Act included $500 billion in Wall Street giveaways. It included $500 billion that was going to be leveraged into $4 trillion for Donald Trump and his friends. It's unsurprising that Donald Trump's economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, wrote the foreword to her book and that she's now advancing the Wall Street agenda to make sure that working families get a smaller proportion of federal aid instead of a larger proportion of federal aid. This is completely unacceptable. Additionally, that bill carved out every single mixed status family and undocumented person in the United States of America. That means our community would not have benefited and largely has struggled to benefit from the CARES package. The third thing was that I actually read the damn bill, which had the broken PPP system that was put in. And anybody who read that bill saw the flaws in it. I did not think that that bill was ready for prime time. Our small business owners have now told me it was not ready for prime time, and that we are now struggling to fix this thing that we all recognize as a problem ahead of time. But that being said, I'm proud to have sponsored the HEROES Act. I do try at every single point to get more and more assistance for working families and our families here in New York's 14th congressional district, which does mean that when corporate Democrats try to sneak in lobbyist goodies, I'm going to stand up and say no.
Let me ask. I'm going to ask you a hypothetical, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, and I wanted to get back to you as well, Ms. Caruso-Cabrera. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, yours was the sole vote in the Democratic conference against the bill that you just referenced. If it were the deciding vote, would your vote have been the same?
You know, I think one of the interesting dynamics about Congress is that we know when there's going to be if there's one person that's a deciding vote before it meets to the floor. So what I would have done in that situation is that if I were the deciding vote, as I have done previously, is that I would have negotiated for hard improvements to the bill and get those improvements. And yes, I would have supported it.
Okay, and Ms. Caruso-Cabrera, I have a different hypothetical for you, which is that if you were convinced that the bill had nothing in it that was going to help the constituents, or that a very large swath of the constituents of New York 14 would be excluded, would you still have voted for the bill?
No, but that's not what was at stake. $75 billion for hospitals. Elmhurst Hospital needed that money. Jacoby Hospital needed that money. And when you listen to her explanation about why she was the only Democrat, she makes it sound like she's the only Democrat who cares. It's an insult to every other member of the Democratic Party.
Listen,
because she's not a real Democrat. She's a democratic socialist, and she's a polarizing, divisive force. She is wrong for the times. She is wrong for New York. And she is wrong for our neighborhoods. Look at that vote.
Let me bring Ms. Khan into this conversation, and I'll give you that same sort of hypothetical. The bill comes up. You're aware that it's going to leave out a lot of small businesses. You're aware that it's going to leave out a lot of mixed status and undocumented families in your district. What would you do?
I would not vote for it, because my district is small business, is immigrants who have low income, that they need the fund. But I also would put a bill out to bail out the people. We need something to bail out the people, that people are not getting any funds. The $1,200 has not reached the people as of yet. There's so many people who are still suffering, and we are sending another bill out, but what happened to that $1,200? So I would not support that bill. But I do want to say something to Ms. Cortez. There is an ad that you put out there that I take money from Wall Street and I take money from special lobbyists. I do not. It's a grassroots campaign. I take funds only for the people of that district, and anybody who's actually a bodega owner, who's actually a Uber driver. People give me $5, $10. So I just want that to clear. I don't support any interest in Wall Street or in special lobbyist group. I'm independent. I'm here to work for my community, and I stand up for people who needs rights and who need to come out of the poverty level which we're having in right now. Just wanted to clear that.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much. If I just may very quickly, thank you so much, Badran, and I just wanted to let you know that there was a Facebook. It did not name your name specifically, so they said opponents instead of opponent.
Yeah, you were talking about me. Yeah,
she wasn't talking about you. Because you have taken millions of dollars from Wall Street. But Ms. Badran, I want to publicly apologize to you if you have been included or if your name was any way associated with Ms. Caruso-Cabrera's reprehensible support. And so I want to thank you for running that grassroots campaign.
Okay, candidates, it is now
reprehensible support. She just insulted thousands and thousands of people, Errol.
I'm going to get to you next. It's time now for the cross-examination. That's when each candidate gets a chance to ask one question of one rival, and we do start with you, Ms. Caruso-Cabrera.
Representative Ocasio-Cortez, why were you the only Democrat to vote against $75 billion for hospitals, $25 billion for coronavirus testing, hundreds of billions for paychecks, which many small business owners tell me was incredibly helpful. Why did you throw away 25,000 jobs and $27 billion in tax revenue in a deal that Governor Cuomo worked very hard to bring? Can you admit that it would be so great to have those jobs right now? Imagine if we had those jobs right now, helping us get past this pandemic.
Okay.
People here want to get back to work.
That sounds like a question. I think we answered the first one. You sort of asked too. If you want to take the second one, which I think is a reference to the Amazon deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, first and foremost, there were strong issues with this, and first and foremost, among them was the fact that we have a natural experiment with the Amazon HQ. We have the one that did not happen here in Queens, and you have the one that happened in Virginia. And what happened in Virginia was that almost immediately rents went up almost anywhere between 15 and 20% before even the campus was finished. Secondly, economic experts have studied these huge subsidy boondoggle deals over and over.
They were not huge subsidies. They were not huge subsidies.
Whether it was Foxconn, whether it was here in Virginia, et cetera, and they have determined that they do not provide the return on investment that these corporations like to say. And when you talk about those jobs, you need to think about where those numbers and assessments are coming from. These were not independent assessments. These numbers and reports were coming from people who were vested in making sure that this deal got hammered out. And we already saw in the initial announcement of it that people started coming in, swooping in, buying in property, and already raising property prices in the middle of one of the greatest housing crises that we have in New York City. I believe in making sure that we're creating jobs. I think that if you want to give if you want to give $3 billion away in subsidies, why aren't those going to small businesses? Why do they have to go to Jeff Bezos, who's already one of the richest men in the world? Why?
There's no money for schools. You are misinforming people.
All you get is a question. You don't get to control the answer. We're going to move on to Ms. Khan. You can ask a question of one of your rivals.
So I want to ask Ms. Cortez the questions. So you supported to close Rikers, and which I agree, but then you did not support to open any more jails in the community, which is a concern for me. So where are we going to put the violence crime? Where are we going to locate them? How are we going to do it? If we put it in the existing jails we have right now, which is already overcrowded, that's a big issue. So my question is, as I said, where do you want to put these people who committed these crimes if you do not agree to opening jails, which I do agree of closing Rikers?
Yes, thank you. So I think it's an excellent question, and it was a profound source of rich debate here in the city. First thing that I would like to just kind of delineate was that this was a city council proposal. It was not a congressional one. Yep. But that being said, I did support the closure of Rikers, and I had extraordinary concerns about opening 5 new jails, each in every single borough of New York City, especially with the language that the resolution, or rather the language that was before the city council, allowed loopholes so that Rikers could not close and you could still construct those 5 new jails. And to me, I believe firmly, I am somewhat of a radical in this sense. I do not believe that a healthy society has a mass incarceration complex. And I do not think that the legislation that was before the city council was strong enough to secure a decarceral policy. I had real concerns that this would result in an expansion, despite a lot of folks saying that this was going to just merely keep the population either the same or slightly reduced. I'm not quite sure that the legislative language actually allowed for that.
So
And finally, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, you get to ask a question.
Sure, I'd like to ask a question of this Badran Khan. It's been, a rigorous. Badran. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Badran, I was interested in your stance on standardized testing. You mentioned that you are supportive of standardized testing, and I was interested into how how you would respond to a lot of the educators in our community saying that the overwhelming pressure around standardized testing is now leading teachers to teach to the test rather than making sure that we are having comprehensive actual education curricula in terms of curriculum and content.
Well, the reason I did support the standardized testing is people like, let's talk about Stuyvesant. That's the big one, Stuyvesant, Bronx Science. And people were getting in, like the communities who's been trying to get their children in these, they work really hard. The parents strive really hard for them to get into these schools. But the issues become is like areas like, say, the Bronx, certain parts of the area in Queens, they do not have enough funding to get these students to get to that portion. That's where we have the issues are. So if we could get more funding for our schools, then all these students can and get what they're looking for. Because I have people in the Bronx that actually go to Stuyvesant, actually go to Bronx Science in Brooklyn. We need more, but we need more base education before that. We don't have enough funding for education. Some of the schools have 30 to 40 students in the class. So I support the high school, but I do not support the grade level ones. That's totally different. I supported the standardized high school when people actually put it through kids. They have funding. They want to go to these prep courses. They should do that. But my idea is all the schools should have enough funding so they could get ready to go take these exams. We need to see it from the ground level. We don't have enough funding. We don't have enough prep courses. That's what I'm looking for, kids. So that's why I support it, but we need to have more levels so people could get to those classes, and especially the people who do not have, they don't have much of their income level they can do. They can't fight with certain people like, you know what, I don't have enough money to pay for this prep course. We need to offer that in our schools for free.
Okay.
And then it goes to my after school programs too.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Khan. Thank you, candidates. Stand by, please. We're going to take a short break here. We'll be right back with more of this debate in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to our Democratic primary debate for New York's 14th congressional district. It's time for our lightning round, where each candidate will answer my questions with a brief response, usually yes or no. We're going to start with this question, candidates. Ms. Caruso Cabrera, with Bernie Sanders endorsing Joe Biden, should there still be a New York primary?
I don't think that it's necessary, but we're going to do it, and I'm glad of it. I have supported Joe Biden from day one, unlike my opponent, who said that Joe Biden shouldn't even be in the same party as she is.
Lightning. Ms. Khan, should we have a primary?
Yes, it's constitutional. We need to have it. It's definitely.
Okay. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes, everyone in this country should vote.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, if reelected, would you vote to have Nancy Pelosi continue as Speaker of the House?
Well, you know, that's always subject to continuing dynamics. But
yes,
I support her. Yes, maybe. Yes, if she wants it. She's also already indicated that she may or may not run again. So it all depends on conditions.
Ms. Khan, if elected, would you vote to have Ms. Pelosi continue as Speaker of the House?
Yes, I will.
Ms. Caruso Cabrera.
Enthusiastically, yes.
Ms. Caruso Cabrera, should the NYPD continue to provide security in the city's public schools?
When it's necessary, yes. We want children to be safe.
Ms. Khan.
Yes, definitely.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Right now, the New York City police force in New York City public schools is equal to the Boston entire police department. So I don't think that we should in the level that it is now. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, should taxes be raised on households that make more than $500,000 a year?
Yes.
Ms. Khan.
Definitely.
Ms. Caruso Cabrera.
I don't advocate raising taxes on New Yorkers at all right now. We face an existential threat. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez did vote to raise taxes on homeowners against Governor Cuomo's wishes. The SALT tax is killing us. I would work to get rid of the SALT tax.
Ms. Caruso Cabrera, should social media companies be allowed to censor content on their platforms?
Yes, they should.
Ms. Khan.
Yes.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Carefully, yes.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, should a conviction on a charge of looting be punishable by time in jail?
I'm an abolitionist, or I try to be in this flawed world. So I try to avoid jail time. I believe in restorative justice. So I think it's all by a case-by-case basis.
Ms. Khan.
It's probation, and depending on what kind of crime they committed.
Ms. Caruso-Cabrera.
Case by case, I'm waiting to see what Attorney General Letitia James's report brings back about what we saw during the police activities during the protests. And I would think that she would have some good analysis about what should be done, and that police should be using their best judgment when it comes to the most severe cases.
Ms. Caruso-Cabrera, at this time, would you feel safe riding or having family members ride the city subways?
If you're wearing a mask and social distancing, yes.
Ms. Khan.
Yeah, definitely. I have no issues going out and yeah.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Well, I understand that people feel unsafe, but I think we should be able to ride subways.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, what is the last social thing you did before social distancing became a thing?
I haven't had a social life in 2 years, Errol. I cook myself dinner.
Okay. Ms. Khan.
I was actually getting my petition signatures, knocking doors and knocking, that's what I was doing, walking the street, the train station, and knocking on every door.
Got it. Ms. Caruso-Cabrera.
Same here, yeah. I was out, my last activity was meeting with voters until we couldn't anymore.
And finally, Ms. Caruso-Cabrera, should the Democratic Party hold an in-person national convention this summer?
Only if social distancing can be maintained. You're going to have to keep people far apart. So I think it'd be very difficult at this point, but only if we can be safe.
Ms. Khan.
If we could hold one virtually, that would be great.
Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Right now, no, I don't think we have the contact tracing and testing capacity for in-person. If that changes and public health experts say it's okay, then yes.
Okay, thank you, candidates. To close out today, I wanted to have a discussion about, from a federal level, the health care question and the question of Medicare for all. There are those who say that it's a great idea but not attainable. There are those who say that the existing system, Obamacare, should be strengthened. There are those who favor entirely different solutions. I wanted to hear from each of you about what is the correct path forward. Let's start with you, Ms. Caruso-Cabrera.
Well, first, let me be clear. I support Medicare and Social Security. I wanted to address that. I didn't get a chance earlier on. That's extremely important. It's important for the most vulnerable to make sure that we have that. Medicare for all is about taking health insurance away from people who have health insurance that they already like. Union members have negotiated very good health insurance, and they gave up salary for that health insurance. And now we're going to take it away? President Obama had a much better idea. We need to focus on people who don't get insurance through their work and make sure that there are affordable options for them to buy. And there are ways to do that through strengthening Obamacare and improving it.
As a freshman member of Congress, what do you think you'd be able to do to advance that scenario that you just described?
Well, I would work very closely with the Democratic leadership, unlike my opponent who works against them, to bring forth ideas that would make much more choice available for people. When you go to the marketplaces, because I've been on them, that's how I get my health insurance, there aren't that many choices. We need to expand the number of choices so that way you can have different price levels, different levels of services, depending on what you need at what stage you are in life.
There's an argument out there that in the past, at least, possibly in your book, I can't claim that I've read it yet, that you have advocated cutting entitlements. Is that true?
I support Medicare and Social Security. A lot of what you're hearing are things from more than 10 years ago, which are taken wildly out of context, whereas my opponent in the last 2 years has voted against money for hospitals, against money for coronavirus testing, and against billions of dollars to keep people employed. Her record, she wants to criticize my deep past, her record is what she's afraid of running on.
Well, let me move on to Ms. Khan, who I think has looked at the book, where I think some of this was sort of discussed. What's your sense of where we should go at the federal level? What would you do as a freshman member of Congress to advance it?
Well, right now I would do universal health care. I support Joe Biden's public option right now. And I think people who could keep their private options for the time being, the situation, what we need to get that done quickly. But there are some people here who don't have health insurance. I do understand Ms. Cortez about the congressman about Medicare for all, but we need a solution now. And I know that bill was tried to be passed by Senator Sanders, and I think it didn't go through the committee. So what can we do now to help these people to get health care? Because health care is a crisis. And for family, friends, anyone you know, they're all worried about, would I get health care? Can I go for testing? So that would be my solution. Public health care right now, currently, the Obamacare worked, but we need to emphasize and make it stronger. And then the other thing is we need to also discuss about prescription costs, which is drastically insane. And if you do have private health insurance, we need to work about the deductions, the co-pays. So it's not just we move to one path. We need to discuss both paths. How can we have the public option and the private, but make sure private is affordable for people. And especially if you're laid off right now from any company, there should be required by law to give them 6 months to a year of health insurance with the current situation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Khan. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
No, it's no secret. I believe healthcare is a human right, which means that I do not believe that we should be passing policies that allow millions of Americans to continue uninsured, which has frankly been some of my concerns with a lot of different healthcare plans and legislations that we've seen put out. I believe that we should have a healthcare plan, and I believe in Medicare for all as a system to make sure that we guarantee every person in the United States the ability to go to a doctor. In terms of those interim plans and how we get there, if we were able to right now, I do believe that we should expand Medicare to every person to all the 40 million plus people who have become unemployed due to coronavirus. And I think that if there's anything that coronavirus has taught us is the fallacy of employer-dependent health insurance. It's much less stable than people think it is. And it really just takes the snap of a finger for a person to go from insured to uninsured in their greatest moment of vulnerability. Additionally, I would say that I would be very cautious to spread the mythology that unions are against Medicare for all. Unions are some of the greatest champions of Medicare for all precisely because they have had to cut their salaries in negotiations for healthcare. It doesn't mean every union is in supportive of it, but the National Nurses Union is supportive of Medicare for all. The American, the AFA, the Flight Attendants Union, is supportive of Medicare for all because so many workers are giving
Working Families Party didn't get you on the line because you didn't have enough support from unions.
Let her finish.
Excuse me, I'm talking about healthcare. And so
you're talking about unions and you're saying things about unions that aren't true.
By the way, when we talk about delving into your deep past, this isn't a deep past. You were a registered Republican your entire life and just registered as a Democrat until 2 years ago.
I changed my registration in 2015 and you didn't become a registered Democrat until 2016. I am a Democrat. I am pro-choice. I am pro-same-sex marriage. I have always been supportive of immigrants. That's why I've gotten into this race.
Or were you not a registered Republican?
I changed my registration. So
you were a registered.
You just come back to the district to do the election because you do not like Ms. Cortez. I think that was the aim of it, and I think that's the thing. So we need to make sure.
AOC, you should be worried because she's attacking me, which means that she thinks I have a chance.
No,
okay, let's be clear about that.
Everybody's attacking everybody here, but the thing is, we have to make sure that I was going to ask Ms. Cortez this question. So you were saying about the unions, some unions supported. How about the unions who want to keep their health insurance? Because I worked with a lot of unions who actually paid into their health insurance for years and negotiated a lot of things. What about those?
Exactly.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, if they want to keep them.
Let's get a quick response from Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, and I have time to sneak in another important question about public housing. Go ahead.
So first and foremost, we work with those unions as well. We've also been sometimes endorsed or have unions endorse legislation of mine where we have disagreements on these issues. I think what's important to acknowledge is that this is a path. This is a path that we have to get there together. And this is one where we build coalition. And, in fact, there's all of this talk about being divisive. I'm quite a skilled coalition builder. I've had over 100 members of Congress co-sponsor my very first piece of legislation. And about
this is no longer about unions in healthcare. You've now changed the topic. I am a Democrat. You are a Democratic socialist. You're the one who's not a Democrat, and you're the one who hasn't supported Joe Biden. I have supported Joe Biden from day one. You want to talk about divisiveness?
And by the way, Ms. Cabrera, my name is Badran Khan. I'm not she. So please reflect to make sure when you respond back to me, to give me the respect that I give you and Ms. Ocasio. My name is Badran, or if you don't want to say Badran, I'm Mrs. Khan. Give the respect to everybody.
Let me do this. We've got under 5 minutes, but I wanted to get a response from everybody on public housing. For as long as I have covered this issue, which is now decades, the standard response to the crumbling conditions is that we're going to get more money from the federal government. And the number just goes up. One year it's 29 billion, and then it's 32 billion, and now we're talking about 38 billion and upwards of 40 billion. Let's put that aside. If it hasn't worked over the last 30 years, perhaps there's a plan B that might get us there. What would be the plan B? Let's start with you, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Well, I think it's important to denote that the reason we haven't been able to secure these capital funds is because we lacked both a House and Senate majority for a very long period of time. And so when we have such a narrow window, we're not able to do that. I am very hopeful, and I'm working my butt off, including being on Vice President Biden's Unity Task Force, to make sure that we get a Democratic majority in both the House, Senate, and that we have a Democratic president. If that's the window, I do believe that we have a shot at getting the capital funds necessary to finally fix this problem. But if that isn't the case, we absolutely need to make sure that we start to look at some other provisions to make sure that we get our issues fully funded, and that kids aren't drinking lead in their water.
Right. Okay, Ms. Khan.
Well, just think about NYCHA, Pelham Parkway, where is my district. They're suffering from no heat. Their apartments are falling apart. They don't have, I spoke to a woman about a week ago. She said they put in a stove, but there's no knobs on the stove. So we need more funding, and we need the funding right away, just for that. But also when the funding are going there, what happens to the funding? Why don't we have an investigation to see where these funding going to? So I want to make sure when we do get the funding, if we have funding, we need to get funding. And then there's a task force making sure because I'm a financial controller, to make sure we see the fiscal of it and see how and where the funding is going. Because we're in crisis right now. And also with affordable housing, which is not affordable. We need to build more affordable housing. Then we don't have the COVID crisis that we had in Elmhurst, East Elmhurst, in Bronx.
Okay, Ms. Caruso Cabrera.
The federal government's abandonment of NYCHA is horrific and terrible and inexcusable. My opponent, AOC, uses the excuse that there hasn't been a majority in Congress. Well, she's working against having that majority because she's so divisive and polarizing. She hasn't been supportive of Joe Biden. She's been tepid. I have been supportive of him from day one. She has worked against Nancy Pelosi. If she can't work with the Democratic Party, how are we going to get anything done? We need unity. We need to come together. And on all of these issues, she is MIA. I have been to all of the NYCHA projects within the district. And you know what they tell me? AOC is MIA.
Okay, we got it. Real quick response, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
I'm here all the time. I do political education trainings in NYCHA. I drafted the Green New Deal for public housing with NYCHA residents and experts, in addition to the construction trades union and many others, in making sure that we get this. And in fact, we've started to enjoy broad support for the Green New Deal for public housing to not just restore NYCHA to its existing standards, but to make sure that it has world-class clean air, water, and energy efficient facilities within it.
Okay, thank you for the time you gave us. That's going to do it for tonight's debate. Remember that the primary is on June 23rd. If you'd like to request an absentee ballot, you can do so by June 16th. You have to postmark it by June 22nd. In-person early voting begins on June 13th. Thanks so much for watching. Stick with New York 1 for the latest coverage of tonight's protest as the 8 p.m. curfew takes effect right after this short break.